Welcome to the Fictional Physicist, where we look at the laws of time travel, teleportation, and basic physics by how they are presented in fiction. I'm your host, the Fictional Physicist. Let's start the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. In the late 1980s, Back to the Future took the world by storm. Its combination of fun, adventure, and unique story caused a fanbase to form that had not been seen since the likes of Star Wars. And because money happened, the studio started clamoring for a sequel, hoping to cash in more on the adventures of Marty and Doc. But the original movie was intended to be a single stand-alone story with all of the plot threads and character arcs completed. The scene at the end where Doc takes Marty and Jennifer to the future to help their kids was meant to be a fun way to end the movie and not intended to initiate a whole franchise. But the studio execs basically told the Bobs that if they didn't do it, then the studio would find someone who would. So the Bobs agreed and started working on the story for 2 sequels to make a solid trilogy. Did the trilogy hold up? Did it strengthen the story of the original? Did it obey the rules established in the first movie? And did it expand on those rules? Let's look a little closer and see. The second movie picks up literally where the first one left off. Doc Brown arrives and whisks Marty and Jennifer to the future to solve a problem with their kids. They had to tranquilize Jennifer, who they had to bring because she saw the time machine, and put her in an alley so they could keep her safe. The mission: Doc is to intercept Marty's son. Marty is to impersonate his son and go to the Café 80s, which was the Malt Cafe in 1955. Marty is to order a Pepsi and meet with Griff Tannen, who just happens to be the grandson of his nemesis, Biff Tannen. Marty is to get his son out of a robbery that was supposed to take place that night and start a chain reaction that would ruin Marty's family. The most important thing that Doc tells Marty is that he cannot interact with anyone else and not to look at anything. But who wouldn't be tempted to look at the future? Especially this future. After some hoverboard shenanigans, the mission is complete. Marty soon meets Terry, as he finds out that the Cubs have won the World Series. Terry puts the idea into Marty's head that he can go back in time and make money on the season. Marty buys a book that tells the results of every sporting event for the last half of the 20th century with the intention of making money. Doc finds out about this and attempts to discard the book, only to see that Jennifer has been found by the 2 most beautiful police officers in the history of ever, and that they are going to take her to her and Marty's future home. When Marty and Doc leave to intercept Jennifer, it is revealed that Biff had heard the whole conversation and picked up the book, intending to steal Marty's idea. This is where the logic seems to go off the rails, but let's break it down to the rules established in our last video. Biff steals the time machine and goes back to 1955, on the day of the lightning storm that sent Marty home. He meets up with his younger self and gives him the almanac. Old Biff then brings the time machine back to 2015, but nothing has changed. If going back in time creates alternate timelines, then why didn't Biff return to the 2015 that he had created? Why did he come back to the one that he left instead? Let's look at what happens next. Doc and Marty go back to 1985 thinking that all of their time-traveling adventures are over. But Marty soon realizes that things are different. Hill Valley is not the town he remembers and is more like a Mad Max shanty town full of bikers, danger, and shootouts. At the center of it all is Biff, who is now rich, powerful, and running the town into the ground. Marty's mom is now married to Biff, and his father had been murdered. After doing some research, Doc discovers that it is all due to the almanac that Biff took from the future. After finding out the date in which Biff gave the book to himself, Doc and Marty go back to 1955 to stop that event from happening. Doc makes sure to point out that they cannot interfere with the Biffs' meeting because old Biff has to bring the time machine back to the future in order for them to come back, avoiding a paradox. Marty sees the transfer, and once old Biff is gone, he is able to, eventually, obtain the book and destroy it, setting the timeline back to the way it was supposed to be. So how does this work? When old Biff leaves 1955 for 2015, he is now in essence skipping over that time, as Doc had previously pointed out. But this also means that while Biff is in transit, time is still moving forward, and anything that changes the timeline will affect the one in which Biff arrives. For Marty and Doc, this hasn't been a problem because they were the only time travelers and everyone else would have followed the timeline as they were supposed to. Once someone travels in the time machine, they essentially take themselves out of the timeline and become anomalies within it. Any action they take is going to make changes because they were not supposed to be there to take those actions. That means that Doc and Marty were able to fix the timeline by essentially undoing the action that Biff had done. With time constantly trying to correct these actions, it can be said that Doc and Marty fixed the timeline close enough that the space-time continuum naturally corrected itself back to the original timeline before Biff arrived there. Biff paradox solved. This story brings our heroes through scenes from the original movie. We see the iconic moments from different angles, and this is something unique to this movie. There are no other time travel movies that I know of that have done this to this extent. It does raise questions though. How does Marty not remember the odd things that happened around him in the first movie? Why doesn't Doc remember talking to his future self that night? Why doesn't he remember being told by Marty about his being sent back to 1885? Well, in the last video we pointed out the infinite loop that was started by Marty going back and changing the past. A different Marty would have been created due to the changes in history, and it's that Marty that he is hiding from. The Doc and Marty in this timeline are different from the ones we are following because they have lived different histories due to the actions of the original pair. At the end of the movie, Doc is struck by lightning and sent back 70 years to 1885. Less than a minute after Doc's disappearance, a car pulls up, delivering a letter that they have had in their possession for 70 years. Marty realizes that it's from the Doc who is alive in the Old West. But how can this be if the time travel in the movie has not happened at the start of the movie? When Doc went back in time, he started a sort of ripple effect, where actions of a time anomaly causes changes that are only noticed by themselves and other time anomalies. So when Doc went back, it instantly changed things from the perspective of Marty, who himself is a time anomaly. Back to the Future Part 2 is often considered the weakest in the franchise. But the elements placed within it are no less iconic than anything in the other movies. Its biggest weakness was that it wasn't supposed to exist and thus had to dig the writers out of the hole in which they accidentally put themselves. This also presented opportunities to include new elements that they could use to create a much more nuanced story. All in all, it's enjoyable, exciting, and contains just as much attention to detail in storytelling as the original. Thank you for watching The Fictional Physicist. Goodbye. Don't forget to like and subscribe.